Okay, so I just talked about the 5 best picks of the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft. Now I'm going to give you the 5 teams, to me at least, that should feel really good about their draft today. The 5 biggest winners of the 2021 NFL Draft. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to say whichever team probably gets their franchise quarterback is going to be the biggest winner of the draft. I mean, no one cares who else the Green Bay Packers drafted in the 2005 NFL Draft. All they care about is Aaron Rodgers. All those other guys are cast-offs, but because Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer and arguably the most talented quarterback of all time, Green Bay is the biggest winner of that draft. Same thing with the Kansas City Chiefs. Outside of Kareem Hunt in the Patrick Mahomes draft, they drafted nothing but bust outside of Patrick Mahomes and Kareem Hunt. So I will say this. The way I'm basing my list off of is based off this criteria. Which team should feel really good today based on the information we know? In reality, we don't quite know what these players are going to be, but based on what we've seen in college and based on the value of these teams, which teams, I should say, should feel really good about their draft today? In no particular order, these are the 5 biggest winners. I didn't put these teams in order because it's way too hard for me. I'm just going to give you the 5 biggest winners in my opinion in no particular order. I believe the Jets, the Browns, the Ravens, the Jaguars, and the Chicago Bears should feel really good about their drafts. Let's start off with the New York Jets. I believe they nailed at least 3 of their first 4 picks. Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC is a really solid player. They traded to get him. They desperately needed offensive line help. He helps there. Elijah Moore is a really good wide receiver that they took in the second round. He has the ability to make plays for that wide receiver core and really help out Zach Wilson. Not to mention Michael Carter, the running back out of North Carolina, is a real player. And listen, if Zach Wilson can play, and look, I have my doubts about Zach Wilson, but if he's the long-term franchise quarterback for the Jets, and you pair him up with all these players that they drafted, we can look back on this New York Jets draft and say, man, it was an absolute home run. Okay, look, the Jets, they needed offensive line help. They needed another wide receiver. They needed a running back, and they needed a franchise quarterback. They took on those, they realized those needs, and they took on those needs head on. They addressed them, and I think they got some really good players regardless if Zach Wilson is a hit or not. I have my doubts, but regardless of Zach Wilson, they got really good players. The Chicago Bears, to me, are a big-time winner as well. I said the Chicago Bears, heading into the draft, was the one team that desperately needed to trade up for a franchise quarterback. I said they were the one team that needed to trade up for a quarterback. They did that. They traded up for Justin Fields, who to me is a generational talent. That is a home run of a pick. I believe that Justin Fields has a chance to really be the savior of the Chicago Bears. He has a chance to take them to heights that they've never reached, okay? And you also drafted Telvin Jenkins, who to me was worthy of a first-round pick, but you snagged him in the second round. I like that pick. The Bears also drafted another offensive lineman later in the draft. They were able to pick up Daz Newsome, a 6th-round pick out of North Carolina at wide receiver. I think Daz Newsome could be a big-time compliment to Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. So now you've given Justin Fields a really good weapon and an improved offensive line. Chicago should feel really good about their draft. Baltimore, for me, should be a winner. The Baltimore Ravens clearly needed to improve their wide receiver core. We've seen over the past 3 years, the wide receiver core let Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens down in the playoffs. Well, they drafted Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota in the first round. He's a playmaker. I like him a lot. They drafted Taylor Wallace out of Oklahoma State, who was getting some first-round buzz a year ago before getting hurt. He fell all the way to the 4th round. That could end up being a steal. They also drafted Jason Oweh out of Penn State. Now, I have my questions about him, but I do trust the Baltimore Ravens coaching staff to coach him up and try to get the most out of him. And I think that he has a lot of potential, even though he didn't really produce a whole lot in his final season at Penn State. But they needed an edge rusher to replace Matthew Judon, and they got that, hopefully, in Jason away. They drafted Ben Cleveland. They needed offensive line help. I believe Ben Cleveland can be offensive lineman that really helps them. They also got Shaun Wade in the 5th round, a playmaking cornerback that really fills a need for them. I like what Baltimore did. The Cleveland Browns continue to add to an already stacked roster. If you want to follow a blueprint on how to build a real football team, follow the Cleveland Browns blueprint. They're doing an excellent job in Cleveland. They've really turned around that franchise, the new front office, and the new regime. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Okay, I was shocked he didn't go in the 1st round. But Cleveland got him in the 2nd round, and he's a playmaking middle linebacker that will make plays for that defense. They needed a middle linebacker, so they got that. They also drafted Greg Newsome II out of Northwestern, a playmaking corner that's very versatile. You know, he's going to help that secondary out a lot. They drafted Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn, one of the fastest players in this draft, a playmaking wide receiver to already a stacked wide receiver core. Tommy Togiai was one of the most dominant players in all college football this past season on the defensive side of the football. They snagged him in the 4th round. He's a really good D tackle. I like that pick a lot. And last but not least, I want to talk about the Jaguars. You know, obviously Trevor Lawrence is the big highlight right here. But I love the Travis Etienne pickup because if you pair Travis Etienne with James Robinson, that has a chance to be a dynamic, elite running back duo. I'm a huge fan of what Travis Etienne brings to the table. They also drafted Tyson Campbell, you know, a guy that's a really good quarterback that can really help that secondary out. Walker Little, to me, is very underrated as an offensive lineman. They also drafted Luke Farrell, who really wasn't asked to do a whole lot at Ohio State, but I believe if he's called upon, he can do some good things in Jacksonville, even though Tim Tebow might be taking a spot. But either way, I like Luke Farrell. I think Jacksonville had a very good draft. So those are the 5 biggest winners of the draft based on what I know today. The New York Jets, the Cleveland Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and last but not least, the Chicago Bears. The 5 biggest winners of the 2021 NFL Draft. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God-blessed day, and I'm out.